Welcome into this week's episode of Three True Values. I'm your host, James Fletcher, and we are back with you after an unexpected week off. Had some illness that I was dealing with, just was not going to be in peak podcasting performance. And so we kind of decided to hit delay, take a week off. Yes, we had NCAA tournament action, but we decided to pause. We knew that any of the coaching news that was coming out, we could kind of wait and put into our coaching carousel special that will be coming out here in just a couple weeks. We'll have a transfer portal special coming here just after the college basketball season puts a bow on everything here at the Final Four. But this week we had to get back into it. We had to get back into the grind because it's time for the Final Four. So here in this first segment, we're going to take a look at how we got here, look at the highlights of the NCAA tournament, what stood out from March Madness to this point, how we ended up with these four teams at the end of the season, what it means about this sport, what we can take away from what we've seen throughout the last month or so. Then in the second segment, we're going to talk all things Final Four. We're going to preview both of those matchups. We're going to break down where I think the advantages will lie for each of these four teams as they look to make it into the national championship game. And then in the third segment, we will get you out of here by crowning a hypothetical champion. We are going to pick the national champion here. We, of course, picked in our bracket picks back at the start of the NCAA tournament, Duke to win it all. They have been eliminated. We'll get to that here in just a second. So we will name a new team that I think will lift the trophy at the end of this week. On Monday, we'll be crowned the college basketball national champion. We will be back on Tuesday as well to recap that performance, recap everything that you saw in the Final Four, put a bow on this college basketball season. So without any further introductions, let's go ahead and get into it. Here in this first segment, we're talking through what shaped the NCAA tournament. Now, we went in depth on the first round. We've talked about some of the upsets that we've seen along the way, at least early on. We talked about Texas making it their kind of status as a Cinderella team, pseudo Cinderella in this format. Iowa breaks into the second weekend as well. They're a team we'll talk about a little bit more here in just a moment. We previewed for you the second weekend as well. So we knew the storylines heading into it. Let's talk a little bit, though, about how things went down over that second weekend. Of course, Iowa took down Nebraska, a battle between two rival schools there, played out in the NCAA tournament. Iowa as a 9 seed, making it all the way to the Elite Eight in their first year under head coach Ben McCollum. A huge accomplishment. Of course, they had Bennett Sturts with them this season. He's likely to head into the NBA draft for next year. That's going to leave a lot of retooling, a lot of rebuilding for this program to do. Really interested to see what kind of investment they get in the transfer portal and what kind of players that they are able to replace their outgoing talent with, because Bennett Sturts really was the engine of this team. It was all about how he handled the pick and roll at the top as that ball handler, navigating the defense, creating opportunities for himself and others in that offense. So can Ben McCollum find his next point guard, find the guy who's going to lead them to great success for years to come here in the Big Ten? That's the next step. Interested to see, can they take a step forward? Can they maintain where they were? Or do they take a step back next season from what we saw this year, having a lottery, potential lottery, at least a first round NBA talent running the show for them there at Iowa? Of course, that meant that Nebraska's season did come to an end. Incredible run for Fred Hoiberg. Just want to one more time tip our hat to that program and what they were able to accomplish this year. First NCAA tournament win. They go on to get 2 wins in the NCAA tournament. So big time stuff for him there. Going to be interesting to see how they reinvest, because they've got a few key pieces that will be leaving, a few that can return as well, though. So they have a really solid foundation. It's going to be about filling out around those pieces here as the transfer portal opens in just a few days. We saw Illinois knock off Houston. That was a really interesting one that I thought really showed that Illinois was in a different league than what we had talked about them to this point in the season. They were the offensive juggernaut. They were the team that had historic numbers on one side of the floor. But on defense, things just hadn't fully added up. They hadn't gotten in a great rhythm. They didn't force turnovers. Sure, they didn't commit turnovers on offense, but it's hard when you're not creating extra opportunities for yourself in that way, when you're not stopping the other team from getting the shot up. You put yourself at risk. And we saw them accumulate some losses through the regular season as a result of that, particularly in Big Ten play when they were playing night in and night out against high caliber opponents. We've seen the strength of the Big Ten here in this NCAA tournament, how far those teams were able to progress. So for them to come in against Houston, a team that had a really solid offense throughout the entirety of this season, and brought in a defense that looked like it could challenge Illinois in a few different ways. To win that game 65-55 said a lot. To hold that Houston team to a low scoring output really kind of just suffocated them for stretches of that game. It was really impressive to see them turn up and kind of find a new gear on defense. And it made you kind of think, is this Illinois team going to show us something special, show us something different that we weren't expecting from them? Can they make it deeper in this tournament as a result of improved defensive play? That, of course, has been the case because they advanced through, play Iowa, and beat the Hawkeyes, only allowing them 59 points. Now, Iowa does play a much slower pace, and so it can be hard to judge their score against some of the others that you're going to talk about in the course of this postseason. But still, that's multiple games deep into the NCAA tournament. We're talking about the second weekend, and Illinois held two teams under 60 points. That is really impressive stuff from a team that we thought was lagging behind on defense. We thought defense was going to be what held them back from winning it all once we got deep into the tournament. That has not been the case at all. They have stepped up in a major way and are performing at a level now entering the Final Four that is really impressive. We're going to have to talk about that more in the next segment. We also had Arizona blasting Arkansas. That was really fascinating. I, of course, picked Arkansas in my bracket, not out of an extreme confidence that Arkansas was the better team, but I felt that with a guy like Darius Acuff, the run that he had been on, the performances that he had strung together, if any team was going to have a chance to knock off one of the 3 1 seeds that we talked about separating themselves from the competition, it would be this Arkansas team. They felt like they had the right formula with a couple of the role players playing really well coming into that game. They had built up that momentum through the SEC tournament. It felt like maybe they had some juice there. That was not the case. They lose 109-88, just weren't good enough defensively to stop this Arizona team that is just so devastating on both ends of the floor, has been for all of this season, bar 1 week. They had one bad week, lost 2 games in a row. Other than that, they have run the table. They have been perfect outside of that 1 week in February. We'll talk about that a little bit more in that next segment as promised. We moved into the next set of games, and we got Michigan kind of rolling over Alabama, Duke surviving late against St. John's, UConn with a close win over Michigan State, and then Tennessee upsetting Iowa State. Of course, Iowa State playing without Joshua Jefferson, who went down with injury. That was just a devastating blow. I think that they were a team that really could have made a little bit more noise into the Elite Eight, at least had they had who Kimpom rates the number 2 player this season, Joshua Jefferson, just behind Cameron Boozer, ahead of Yaxel Lindeborg, according to those Kimpom metrics. So he is one of the top players that we've seen, and for him to be out, it really did just stifle the ability for Iowa State to advance. We, of course, then in the Elite Eight, we mentioned Illinois over Iowa. We had Arizona advance past Purdue. That game got close for a little while. Arizona able to separate, though. They're just a cut above. I think that's clear from these first 2 weekends. Arizona and Michigan have both just been in a different class than the teams that they have faced. And now they meet up in the Final Four. We'll talk about that, of course, in that next segment. Michigan blasts Tennessee. Was never really a contest. And then it looked like Duke was going to do the same to UConn. Up big, up 20 points at one point, up 15 heading into the second half. And UConn just slowly whittles away that lead. They chipped away at it. They just kept playing hard. Duke, no collapse necessarily at any point, but it just felt like it went from 15 down to 12. And then they couldn't get it back up to 15. Instead, it went to 11. Then it would get back up to 13, but it would come quickly back to 9. Then to 7. And it just felt like, oh, okay, well, UConn is really in this game now. But Duke was still always going to win. Until we got, of course, to the final possession. Duke up by 2 points with the ball. They inbound, get the ball out of their hand, get the ball back to the inbounder. And now they've run significant time off the clock, and it becomes clear that UConn is attempting to foul. But that they are not going to foul. They are trying to trap the ball. They are trying to force the steal. They've decided that that is their best path towards winning this game because of the free throw shooters that Duke had put on the floor. They were either going to extend it to a 3-point game or a 4-point game and put it away inside the final 10 seconds. So the ball gets into the hands of Caden Boozer, the freshman point guard who was out there in place of Caleb Foster. Foster, who had performed incredibly well in the previous game, had played decently in this contest, but was still dealing with injury, was still supposed to be on some type of restriction. He's not in the game in the final seconds. And the ball gets to Caden Boozer, and he turns towards his basket. There are 2 players ahead for Duke. Neither of them are being directly guarded. Because again, Iowa State is selling out for this trap. They don't want to foul. And they had clearly sold out that if the clock ran out, the clock ran out. Now, that would have drawn a lot of debate if it had gone that direction as well as what did happen. And that is 2 players coming at the ball, jumping up in the air, again, indicating that they're not trying to foul. They're going to try to deflect this pass that he wants to throw. And if you're Caden Boozer, the obvious fix there, as the clock ticks inside 5 seconds, is to just wrap the ball up. Make them foul you. Particularly as they run towards you. Because they're either going to run into you as they jump to deflect this path, or they are going to land, and that's going to give you the opportunity to throw the ball, if not to your teammate, just in the air. And with that amount of time left, you're probably going to see the clock run out. But he tries to make the pass. It gets tipped, gets into the hands of UConn. Alex Caravan gets it on the wing. He sees a defender closing out on him, finds Braylon Mullins, who had not performed very well throughout the course of that game, had not knocked down shots from the perimeter like he's been able to throughout his career, catches it in rhythm from well beyond the 3-point line, and knocks down a game winner at the buzzer to send UConn into the Final Four and send Duke packing. What is really interesting about this game, we can break down all kinds of things. There's so many angles. You've seen debate about Dan Hurley. Should he have received a technical foul for his interaction with a referee after that, going face to face with an official immediately following the action? There's just so many different angles. We talked about the actual play itself. What could Caden Boozer have done different? What if Duke had kept the ball in the hands of Cameron Boozer? Would UConn have been forced to foul eventually? Would they have accidentally fouled at some point while going for the steal? So many different scenarios could have played out. But one thing outside of the play itself, the game itself, that I do want to discuss here before we move to the next segment is Jon Scheyer. Because he has put up historic numbers in his first 4 seasons as the Duke coach, setting all kinds of records for win percentage, total wins. All of his accomplishments put him right there with the greatest to ever coach in college basketball through this tenure he has had so far. But he hasn't won it all. And you can look around and you can very easily defend him, and I would, that it took Bill Self over a decade to win his first title. It took John Calipari a long time, multiple stops to get his first title, even after making the Final Four at multiple schools. It took even Mike Krzyzewski at Duke. So this is after he got a shot at Army. Once he got to Duke, it took him 11 years to win it all. So there's no guarantee that you're going to win one over any time span. Just look at how long it's been since John Calipari has won one now. Look at the gap since the North Carolina program has lifted a national championship trophy. We go through these ebbs and flows in college basketball. But if you're Jon Scheyer, there's no getting around the fact that the public is going to have a perception of you. The perception is that you can't get it done. After losing in the Final Four last year with Cooper Flagg on your team, a reclass freshman who was the consensus number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft, who was the consensus player of the year, and then to turn around this year and have the consensus player of the year, a freshman, Cameron Boozer, and again in the Elite Eight, you let a lead slip away in the second half and suffer a loss. I don't think that it's anything particularly that Jon Scheyer did in this game that cost them. But when you don't win a championship, when you had back-to-back player of the year, top draft candidates, that's going to stick. That's particularly when you're at a big brand that has haters, that has people who are going to be rooting against you regardless. That's going to give them ammunition. You're going to hear more and more this offseason and in the next season questions about whether Jon Scheyer can get it done. And I'm confident that he will get it done at some point. But the sooner rather than later is always beneficial for these coaches in getting that off their back, getting that deep breath, that sigh of relief, because it just takes one piece of ammunition away from the people trying to tear you down. We will talk about the Final Four matchups. We have UConn against Illinois on one side. We have Arizona against Michigan on the other, right here on 3 True Values when we come back. Welcome back in here on 3 True Values. We are doing a Final Four preview for you, getting you ready for this weekend's upcoming games. We've got UConn facing Illinois on one side of the bracket, and then the 1 seed showdown between Arizona and Michigan on the other side. Here in this second segment, we're going to start with UConn, Illinois. That, of course, comes on the left side of the bracket. UConn upsets Duke, the 1 seed. They get out of the East region. Florida loses early in the South region. That leads Illinois, the 3 seed, the path to go over Houston, over Iowa, and into the Final Four. We have a 2 versus 3 here, the matchup that we are ready for, and it's a really fascinating one. We saw from UConn their highs. We just saw the highest high that they've had this season. They beat Duke. They complete that comeback. But with the comeback, we also understand that they were down 20 points They were down 15 at the half. Yes, they made the comeback, but can they sustain that second half performance rather than what we saw from them in the first half? Can they avoid getting into that? Because yes, this is a UConn team that is in their third Final Four in 4 seasons. This is a team that was back-to-back champions, just 1 year removed from that. But this is not the same team that we saw win those back-to-back championships. This is a team that suffered losses in the regular season that kept them from the Big East regular season title, particularly against St. John's. They lose again to St. John's in the Big East tournament, keeping them from winning the postseason title. So they come into this NCAA tournament and had not just been playing consistently their best basketball all year long. There had been ups and downs. There have been. Even in that game against Duke, Braylon Mullins does not have his best performance. Alex Karaban does not shoot particularly well for long stretches until he hits some clutch shots there towards the end. So where does it come from this UConn team? Can they get better performances? Can they get more consistency from some of their players in order to go up against what has been one of the best offenses in college basketball? Illinois has put up incredible numbers on that end of the floor. We've seen freshman Keaton Wagler, a breakout star, really take over on this offense. He can play on and off the ball. That's what's most fascinating about him, not just moving forward as an NBA prospect, but within this offense, because it means that you can keep your veteran point guard, Kylan Boswell, a guy who can organize the team, who has a great understanding of that Illinois system, of what the other team wants to do. He's kind of got just that veteran presence. He can slow down the game when needed. On both ends of the floor, he provides you with value. So to have him out there, very valuable. You put him next to Keaton Wagler. And then you also add Andres Stojakovic, who comes off the bench. He can play in that 2 spot, the 3 position. Even if they want to go really small ball, they could really slot him at the 4 if they wanted to. And he has the ability to maybe not play as a point guard, but he gets paint touches. He gets to his spots offensively. He hasn't knocked down from the perimeter this year, but his finishing at the rim has been very good. Inside the paint, he has been able to score productively. A big-time producer on that end of the floor. And so when you've got Keaton Wagler, who you can rely on to have a big output, Andres Stojakovic to have a big output, then you look in the front court where David Mirkovic has continued to emerge, become a steady performer for them, a guy who can get into double figures each night. And you don't know what you're going to get. A heater from Zvonimir Ivicic, this kind of more steady presence of Tomislav Ivicic in that front court. You've, of course, got not big scoring producers, but guys that you know you can rely on to stick out there and give you some solid minutes in Hummerkaus and Jake Davis. You line that up against this UConn team where I think Terrace Reed is going to be a force. I think if UConn is going to get this win, it's going to come down to Silas Demery and Terrace Reed. We're going to see big rebound numbers from Reed. We're going to see some solid scoring and assist numbers from Silas Demery if they are going to get this one over the line. I just right now am leaning towards Illinois, though, and I wouldn't have thought that just a couple of weeks ago. But we've looked at this Illinois team continue to get better and better on the defensive end. We've known about the offense. It has been at a level that could win you a national championship all season. The defense has been where they've left enough holes to where if that offense even slightly slips up, if it's just not at a historic level, sometimes they can take a loss, particularly against a really good team, a team at the top of college basketball. So for Illinois to have shored that up, keep their opponents under 60 points pretty consistently in this NCAA tournament, to be able to stop some different offenses with some really good point guards between over the past week, Bennett Sturts and Kingston Flemings. I think that those are really good signs that they've got a little bit of something figured out. They've shored some things up. They've become maybe not a different team in the NCAA tournament, but they've become a better team in the NCAA tournament. And I do like them to advance into the national championship game in this matchup, which is razor thin. If you look at the line right now, you look at who's favored, very close contest between these two teams. On the other side of the bracket, we've got Arizona taking on Michigan. These have been two of the three teams that separated themselves across college basketball all season. Them along with Duke, which we saw take an upset loss against UConn, of course. But Arizona has been maybe the most consistent of the group. We saw them take 2 losses over a 1-week span against Kansas on the road and against Texas Tech. Other than that, they had a huge win streak coming into those, and they have a big win streak since then. 1 week in mid-February is the only blemish on their resume. And they are remarkably consistent. They can also account for hits and misses from different players. Braden Burries did not have his best game in the Elite Eight. It didn't matter because Koa Pete had a really strong performance. You look at those freshmen. Those two are relied on to score. They're relied on to produce, really on both ends of the floor. An underrated part of their game, why they have been so consistent, is that even their stars provide you value on both ends. The freshmen have come in and made an impact across the court. You look at the other freshmen in the starting lineup, Ivan Karchinkov, and he's been extremely valuable on the defensive end. His versatility, being a Swiss Army knife out there, able to guard multiple positions, that has been extremely valuable for them. A really good cog who doesn't need the ball in his hands a lot, but he just provides you solid production across the board, puts up a couple stats here and there in the box score without taking away touches from your best players. And then you book in these freshmen with some veteran presence. You've got senior Jaden Bradley, who's been there. He's made deep runs in the NCAA tournament before. He's been a high-level scorer during his college career. He's been a facilitator during his college career. So he understands when to turn on different modes. He can go out there and understand, okay, Burries has it cooking. I just need to play defense and get the ball into the hands of the right player on offense. Or if Burries and Pete are struggling, he understands I've got to get into a pick and roll and I've got to go make something happen. I've got to be the scorer tonight. And I think he's balanced that role really well, along with the other bookend in the middle, Motias Krivas, who has been a real eraser, great impact on defense. His size is a serious factor. He's mobile enough to make teams think about things when they get into the paint. On the offensive end, he sets good screens, able to get to the rim. He helps with the offensive rebounding. And then off the bench, they've got really good role players coming in as well to kind of just fill the minutes as needed. So this Arizona team is extremely deep. They are so talented, and the consistency across the board has really been unmatched throughout the season. On the other side, you've got Michigan, which has dominated for stretches more than any other team in the country. We've seen 40-point wins over ranked teams by this group. When they get hot, they are unstoppable. But they don't always come out and play their absolute best A game. We saw them take a loss against Wisconsin at one point this season, the same Wisconsin team that bowed out in the first round of the NCAA tournament. We saw them, of course, lose against Duke in a really tight contest, one of the best games of the regular season in college basketball. And then we saw them lose to Purdue in the Big Ten championship game. Didn't look like they necessarily took their foot off the gas, but they weren't in that flying form where they just looked unstoppable. You looked at it, and with Yaxel Lindeborg leading the way, that front court is big. Yaxel playing the 3 for stretches, more as Johnson at the four, the physicality that he brings to that position, but also the mobility that he has to step out and guard when needed. You pair that with Ade Mara in the middle, a guy who has been a continued force, a really good rebounder. He's got great size and length. He's really there to be your traditional protect the rim and set screens guy. And he can do some facilitation at the top of the key too. And that's going to be an interesting wrinkle. Can they draw Krivas away from the basket? Is that something that opens up avenues for Michigan to get their bigs outside of Mara to the interior where they might have some physical advantages? That's going to be something to monitor as we get into this game. But I do think that Arizona has the size to match up. You look at Koa Pete, the strength that he has. Karchinkov, he's not as tall maybe, but he's big, he's strong. Awaka can come off the bench and guard. You look at the backcourt for Michigan, and of course, Elliot Kadu has the allergic reaction. Seems like he's going to be okay, like he's going to be able to play. He's kind of been the conductor of all this. Get people into their sets. We've seen Roddy Gale. We know he can be a microwave at times. Will that play a role here? Of course, Namari Burnett, a steady force, veteran presence off the bench that they can bring in and kind of steady the ship on that wing. Trey McKinney, the freshman, does a lot of things that I like. I think he's going to be a great college basketball player for the next few years. I think as he continues to round out his offensive game, he's solid on defense. He's going to compete, and I think he's going to compete on both ends of the floor. He is a valuable piece for them as they try to slow down this Arizona offense and come back and put pressure on the other end of the floor. I think this is one of the best games that we're going to see all season. It has all the potential for a classic between these two teams. These are the one seeds, a 2-loss team, a 3-loss team, facing off head to head here. Both were in the running for a number 1 overall seed. Duke ended up edging out that top spot, but these are two very, very high level teams. I'm going to just lean Arizona despite the Tommy Lloyd distraction rumors and conversations about the UNC job. He, of course, is one of the leading candidates for that position. He's spoken a couple of times, said it will not distract him, but he has not put those rumors to bed. He has not committed his future to Arizona. It's out there. It's floating. I think, though, that this team has been the model of consistency. If there's any team that's going to not react, not go out there and have any issues while their coach is in the middle of some coaching carousel rumors, it's going to be this Arizona team. So we're going to pick them to advance into that national championship game. When we come back on the other side, I will predict who the national champion will be this year, and we will get you out of here. No need for games of the week, but we will get you out of here feeling prepared, hopefully, for the Final Four right here on 3 True Values. Welcome back in here as we wrap up today's show on 3 True Values. We spent the last segment previewing your Final Four matchups. Of course, I have predicted that Illinois will top UConn. I've also predicted Arizona to top Michigan on that side of the bracket. That one is a change from what I have predicted in my bracket at the start of the NCAA tournament. Had Michigan go into the national championship game against Duke, but I did not have Arizona making it to the Final Four as well. So now seeing this matchup, we've got more data. I'm flipping it there for this episode for the purposes of picking the Final Four. I think it's pretty clear cut here who the favorite is going to be in this national title game. I think that whichever team comes out of that right side of the bracket will be the heavy favorite, will be who I pick to win in the national championship game, regardless of who comes out on that left side, which means based on what I have, I am picking Arizona to win the national title. I would pick Michigan over either Illinois or UConn if they were to be the team that does advance, because I think that really these Final Four games could both come right down to the wire. They could be classics in the Final Four. The national championship game, I'm hopeful that we will get another all-time classic. Obviously, we've seen from UConn that they're capable of getting up and playing with one of these top teams in college basketball. Illinois, we've talked about, they've got the offense to do it. If the defense is coming along the way that it looks like it has, they could certainly play in the mix with any team that they come up against. But I do think we're going to see a heavy favorite entering that game. So we're picking Arizona to win it all. I think that the one seeds have it this season. We'll come back with you on Tuesday and we will recap the Final Four. We will talk about our national champion, how they got there throughout the season, who has been crowned the best team in the sport this season. And then we will start turning our attention to the offseason. There's no break here in college basketball. We'll go straight into coaching carousel. We'll go straight into the transfer portal. And then we will start breaking down roster moves, way too early rankings. There's so much to look forward to. But first, we're going to focus all our attention here on the Final Four this weekend. Hope you enjoy. Please, if you have any questions, send them my way at JDFletch3 on all social media. Get in contact with me. Continue to follow, like, subscribe, share this. Get your friends ready for the biggest weekend in the college basketball calendar. It's Final Four time. We are going to crown a champion on Monday. We'll be right back here to talk you through everything on Three True Values. Thanks for tuning in.